Hey guys, welcome back to Foreign Reacts. Today we're going to be checking out a weirdly titled video, America is not Europe. Obviously, it is not Europe, but with a title like that, there is something deeper than the title, right? So we're going to be checking out that video. So if you're not subscribed, please do subscribe, guys. This is where we do foreign reaction. Everything done here has to be foreign to the reactor, and that is who I am. So welcome to Foreign Reacts, and I do hope you guys enjoy your time here. We're trying to grow this channel exponentially. So join the family here, and let's get right into this video, man. And hopefully it is as interesting as the title seems.
I was born and grew up in Denmark, and these are countries where the government spends taxes and spends approximately twice the level of the United States. And while I am very sympathetic to many of your spending proposals, especially on the things you mentioned on early childhood and single payer and the like, I also
They did my boy Bernie, man. They did him dirty, bro. I wish when I had the moment to meet that guy, I did it. He was in South Carolina, bro, and I was in the bus and I was going by, and I knew he was there because it was a little bit before the election. Not the presidential election, but to select the representative for the Dems, right? Democrats, if you guys don't know what I mean by Dems, right? So I should have taken the opportunity and actually met this guy. He's a pretty, he seems like he has a soul for the people, and obviously his thoughts and belief system won't work in America because America is really a greed. It's a country of greed. I'm gonna be honest. At times I was like that because when I was probably about 15, 16, I wanted to be a billionaire. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I wanted to be that guy. My people who I emulated, like I wanted to be like those, were Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, even Mark Zuckerberg. He was one of them, but I was on the pathway of being a greedy person as well, where I would care little to nothing about people like that. But as I grew older, I just stopped, becoming as greedy as possible, wanting everything for myself, which I'm really proud of myself.
Countries that heavily tax everybody, not just the rich people, middle classes. They have consumption taxes on everything of 20%. So while I'm very sympathetic to what you say, my sense is still that you would like to spend as a Scandinavian, but not tax as one. Is that correct?
The answer is, and you raised some very good points.
Comparing the US with Europe and countries in Europe would be naive, oversimplistic, and offend a bunch of people. Land masses are complex. But I'm going to go ahead and compare them anyways, because some of the comparisons between Europe and the US remain way too superficial.
Read my lips. No new taxes.
It's not uncommon to obsess over the usual suspects for why the US is less equal than Europe and also has less good quality, affordable social programs. The analysis is simple. The US has more billionaires and taxes them less. Europe has less billionaires but taxes them more. Need a larger tax base to fund popular social programs and also less inequality? Just raise the taxes on the rich, like the Europeans do. Now, although the tax rates for rich people explain some part of the difference, it doesn't explain enough. Europeans can afford good social programs because a lot of Europeans pay a lot for them, mainly through indirect taxes. And Europeans are also more equal before taxes even factored in because a lot of the social programs they pay more for also reduce pre-tax inequality. Where Americans deal with a sales tax at their final point of sale, Europeans deal with a VAT, which is a consumption tax that taxes at multiple steps across entire supply chains. This means that a lot of things in Europe will be more expensive, but that public money can be redistributed towards social programs that will reduce before tax inequality even more. But the US has, so far, been unable to adopt the same. Why? Well, in part because taxing the wealthiest of society is easier to advertise and justify than taxing everybody a lot more. In Europe, most people don't really need to be convinced about paying for their welfare states because it works sufficiently for most of them. But in the US, there's an intimate struggle with deciding whether pre-distribution will be a state, local, or federal solution. Part of the reason is that in the US, the federal government gets the most media attention, while state and local governments can avoid scrutiny. This means that minimum wage hikes in the US are practically always seen as a responsibility for the federal government, which has to delicately balance different costs of living, like laborers living in New York City and miners living in West Virginia. In Europe, though, a country like France or Denmark can opt for different geographically sensitive policy while also being held more directly into account because the assignment of responsibility is clearer to its citizens.
There's this definition of a wicked problem, which is circulating around in the literature, which suggests that a wicked problem is wicked if it has so many dimensions to it that you can't go at one angle to the problem and try to fix it.
Right.
And I think school finance is like that. So school districts get money from their local communities in the form of property taxes. They'll also get money from the state, and the state might give them money through multiple formulas. And then a portion, a much smaller portion, about 9 or 10%, comes from the federal government. So even if you tried to solve the problem at, say, the state level, there are these other funding sources that come with their own restrictions, which ultimately affect how the money gets used in schools.
In Connecticut, a U.S. state, a school in Bridgeport will be poorer by virtue of being surrounded by poor properties, while a school in Greenwich will be richer because it is surrounded by richer properties. This is because local taxes are largely funded by property values in the area. However, this concept fails to explain everything. Educational disparities also exist across Europe and within its countries. The U.S. is not unique for having a system that predisposes poor children to poorer resources. Education systems are complex. Finland is not the same as Sweden, and resources invested in education and the quality that follows does not seem like a linear relationship. The U.S.'s unique situation is that its quality does not match the amount that the U.S. actually spends on it. One of the problems with answering why resources don't match the quality you would expect in the US is because the decentralized nature of school districts makes it pretty difficult to actually identify what spending works and what doesn't. Overall, there are some indications that, compared with Europe, the amount of staffing, the associated health and retirement benefits, alongside transportation, all add up to more cost for the American education system. But the differences don't end there.
In the 1990s, as the crime rate was plummeting, as American life was getting safer and safer, Americans freaked out and thought that if they take their eyes off their children, the children will be abducted. Now this goes back, the fear was stoked by cable TV in the 1980s. There were a few high-profile abductions. But it's not until the 1990s that we really start locking kids up and saying, you cannot be outside until you're 14 or 15. We took this essential period of childhood from about 8 to 12, when kids throughout history have practiced independence, have gotten into adventures, have made rafts and floated down the Mississippi River. We took that period and said, you don't get to practice independence until it's too late, until that period is over.
Kids in the US are raised differently than kids in Europe. Some blame the planning that produced more isolated American families, some the over-paranoia towards kidnapping in the 1980s, and others point to an increasingly competitive environment where parents try to give their children an edge over the others by helicoptering them. It's really not that far a stretch to say that many European children could be considered to have more freedom at an earlier age. American children are less likely to be able to walk to school alone compared with European children, which you can of course connect to overall crime rates, and authoritative school policy is still much more accepted across the US than it is in Europe.
So, the real key to the distinctiveness of America is the structure of our government. One part of it, of course, is the independence of the judiciary. But there's a lot more. There are very few countries in the world, for example, that have a bicameral legislature. Oh, England has a House of Lords for the time being, but the House of Lords has no substantial power. They can just make the Commons pass a bill a second time. France has a Senate, it's honorific. Italy has a Senate, it's honorific. Very few countries have two separate bodies in the legislature equally powerful. That's a lot of trouble, as you gentlemen doubtless know, to get the same language through two different bodies elected in a different fashion. Very few countries in the world have a separately elected chief executive. Sometimes I go to Europe to talk about separation of powers. And when I get there, I find that all I'm talking about is independence of the judiciary, because the Europeans don't even try to divide the two political powers, the two political branches, the legislature and the chief executive. In all of the parliamentary countries, the chief executive is the creature of the legislature. There's never any disagreement between them and the prime minister, as there is sometimes between you and the president. When there's a disagreement, they just kick him out. They have a no confidence vote, a new election, and they get a prime minister who agrees with the legislature. And, the Europeans...
The difference is simple. European countries are mainly nations, not federations. A European state, if it existed, could never be the same as the US. Written in their constitution, US states are modeled after the federal government, and state governments, which mirror the one above, usually have their own Chamber of Representatives, a Senate, and also have an executive mirrored after their president. In Europe, if there was any state that was above the countries that made it up, it would have to be modeled from those very different countries beneath it, rather than serving as a model for the countries below it. This is an important difference because it means that any kind of European government would have to balance parliamentary systems with presidential republics, federal states with unitary ones, and they'll be expected to create a system that hopefully pleases each one sufficiently. All in all, although the differences between the two are practically endless and some are near impossible to actually describe, it's still a worthwhile effort to try and figure a few out and also discuss them. In some way, Europe has more breathing room to understand what it wants to be, which is no easy task, because whatever you think Europe is, it can still look across the Atlantic and realize what it definitely is not.
I think America can become, the way how Europe is run, I don't think America could ever do it. I just don't. It's embedded in, in every child in America. It's embedded in your head, this type of lifestyle. And it's just not, it's not changeable in my humble opinion. You could try to change it as much as you want. It just won't change. It just won't change. And all of these taxes, like, he said it, literally, the amount of money that is, present from taxes compared to what, the efficiency is just not there. Just like the healthcare system, I'm not sure, but it's like you're paying more money, right? You're paying more money for the healthcare, but the care that you're receiving is way, way less efficient or better compared to a European country. I don't know what to say, man. I just don't dabble too deep into all of this, man. It's kind of I don't even know what to say. But hey, it is what it is, man. Either ways, guys, I'm out of here. Peace.